Hello, I'm Greg Sanders, Group Publisher at QSR Magazine, and I'd like to welcome you to this webinar, Modernization, Transformation, Personalization, What's Going On in the Drive-Thru. Designed to connect the consumer to the restaurant, technologies such as digital menu boards, edge computing, voice, computer vision, and the use of data are transforming the drive-thru. In this program, we'll be looking at the current and future state of the drive-thru and how brands can bring their experience to the next level and ultimately drive ROI using comprehensive digital solutions, AI enabling technologies, and a dynamic content strategy. So now to begin. Presenting for us today are Ravi Siraganedi, who is the Global Hospitality Lead in the Internet of Things, Retail, Banking, Hospitality, and Education Division in Intel, and Brian Selman, who is the Director of Software Innovation at Coates Group. I'm going to turn it over now to Ravi to get started. Ravi, welcome.
Thank you, Greg. Hello, everybody. Thank you for taking your valuable time to listen to what's happening in the drive-thru aspect of the quick serve restaurant business. Today, we will be sharing our thoughts on transformation, modernization, and personalization of the drive-thru experience. We'll also be talking about future-proofing this experience with all the relevant technologies that applies to this space. The wonderful team at Coates and Intel have been collaborating in this space to understand the needs of this market and to address them to a great extent. A lot more has to be done, as we can all relate to, and however, we are all well positioned to address it. Can't wait to engage with you all to understand your needs better. Some of you might be wondering as to, hey, what's Intel's focus here? Why Intel? And to address that, Intel has, as many of you know, manufactures processors and that go into like desktops, laptops, servers, etc. But there is also a very integral part of Intel called the Internet of Things group, whose whole mission is to inspire innovation to enhance all aspects of life. Right. One area of business focus within this space is to incorporate compute and related technology into sensors, the very small sensors that you can imagine, all the way up to kind of the edge compute server class machines that apply in the retail, banking, hospitality, and education. These technologies that I just talked about can analyze data on practically anything to improve decision making and performance. Today, we will dive into the restaurant part of our hospitality business. We started off by looking at, for the restaurant vertical, looking into the tailwinds, headwinds affecting it. Many of you actively involved in this space are well aware of all these market transitions, where we're kind of preaching to the choir. But, I think the traditional versus online transition that's happening as we speak, right? In terms of being able to, cater to customers that are strictly coming into the brick and mortar environments and consuming their favorite menu items versus them being able to order it online and have it delivered to their homes. That's definitely an element to consider for us as we think about solutions. Secondly, convenience and brand, right? Personalization of the experience and the faster faster experience expectations that customers have. And sustainability is table stakes conversation for majority of the chains that are out there, and I think becoming increasingly important for the chains to participate in the sustainability efforts and so forth. And last but not the least, the digital natives transition, the whole customer set, and in terms of how digitally savvy they are and us being able to cater to them. Right. So all of these are transitions that are out there, and many of you are getting ahead of these transitions and responding with more intelligence, unified channels for delivery, automation in many fronts, and being a lot more responsive. Right. We would, however, love to hear back from you if you agree with these transitions, or if there are more that we haven't comprehended here. We would love for you to let us know through your comments and questions, and we'll be happy to follow up here. Couple of trends that are driving the modernization, right? Artificial intelligence. This is happening across all verticals, including restaurants and the brands involved, right? We have seen quite a bit of transformational adoption of artificial intelligence in retailers and brands adopting it, and that same thing applies into the restaurant space as well. Internet of Things, right? This is becoming possible with huge cost reduction in sensors, bandwidth, and computing. And considering the digital natives, technology is the new language, and ensuring that all technology devices communicate and work cohesively. And then the cloud-first strategy. We talked about the faster time and automation and all of those things. All of these happen either at the back end or in the front end, and then the cloud aspect is a very important element of this. Again, these are some of the key trends that we have noticed, and we'll be touching on some of these during the rest of the presentation, but something to point out very quickly. And then we talked earlier about getting customer obsessed and digital natives as an important inflection point. Here is the two customer sets that we believe are going to be game changing, and in terms of setting the course for how the experiences are delivered, right? Mainly the Gen Y, also known as the millennials, and then the Gen Z, who all of us can relate to as to how tech savvy they are and kind of how they drive the experiential nature of what is expected. And this is where these are coming into the restaurants with certain expectations related to seamless experiences, loyalty, etc. And again, we'll touch upon some of these throughout the webinar today. As we start to put together the business and the customer drivers, we see that these current day restaurants are responding by transforming themselves, incorporating technology throughout, right? This ranges from the front of the restaurant, where you see point of sale devices, digital menu boards, self-ordering kiosks, tabletop ordering, drive-through, and so forth, and also extending into the back end, where you have kitchen display systems, digital surveillance, inventory control, tracking, etc. These, however, can be disparate, right? All of these devices that we talk about, they all need to ensure return on investment and achieve business objectives. They all have to be connected. They all have to talk to each other, exchange data among themselves, and enable the chains, the restaurants, to for better business decisions. And if you look at kind of where some of these trends are coming together and how restaurants are making these investments, from various market insights that we have seen and observed over the next 12 months, focus is going to be primarily on restaurants where they're expected to improve business and customer insights, digital customer engagement, loyalty, increasing productivity, and so forth. And from a technology standpoint, and where the hardware investments are happening, drive-throughs, Internet of Things, AI, etc., are all top of the mind technology investments when we look at the broader restaurant space. And that's basically kind of what results in us looking at, what does it take to create that next generation restaurant, right? Touching upon all of these different elements, mainly frictionless experiences, personalization of the experience, analytics for better decision making, and first and foremost is basically the security in terms of customer data, content, and so forth. At this point, I would like to invite Brian, who is Director of Software Innovation at Coates, to double-click and talk through the drive-through modernization, transformation, and personalization.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Ravi. I'm Brian Stallman, Director of Software Innovation at Coates Group, and my role at Coates is to partner with our clients to understand the journey they're on with regards to digital and then collaborate with them in order to understand those needs, those desires, and bring their digital strategy to life, specifically focused on in-restaurant merchandising. For those not familiar with Coates Group, we're a company from Australia, founded in the 60s, and we're traditionally focused in static and letter signage world. And in the late 60s, early 70s, we started our work with McDonald's with static signage with things such as the arches. The early innovations in that industry for the drive-through became things like the rollerboard and scroller board, which was the introduction of day parts into the drive-through. And then as we saw the signage landscape moving from static to digital, we began to make our own investments into digital signage, building our own CMS platform, which we call Switchboard. And then where I'm really focused is the today and tomorrow is the digitization of the restaurant, the enablement of technologies, things like kiosks, digital outdoor enclosures, and many of the strategies related to those, and the content, which I'll cover off on throughout my presentation. As I mentioned, we're a company that has experienced global growth. So I'm based out of our Chicago office, which has an innovation lab. And then I was fortunate enough to spend 2 years in our Sydney headquarters with the team down there. And for everyone on the call today, feel free to reach out to me and stop by the Chicago office and innovation lab. It is a space where we look to partner with our clients, possibly get some content up on screens, discuss their strategies, and really, what are they looking for from a customer experience perspective? What features would they like? And, where are they headed? What's their roadmap over the next few years? So today, for what's going on in the drive-thru, I'm going to be talking through 4 key topics: modernization, transformation, personalization, and then we'll have Intel cover off future at the end. So we're going to start off with modernization. So as we look at modernization, the picture you have in front of you right now is a real drive-thru that I was in a few weeks ago in 2020. And this is an example of what you'll see going on in the marketplace with brands currently using static signage today. So what you'll see is the traditional menu board. Then you'll commonly see add-ons to the left of the menu board and the right of the menu board, things stuck to the base or taped to the ground. The real innovation on this one was the taping of extra merchandising to the speaker posts. So what'll happen is brands look to expand their menus. They look to solve for day parting, or their strategies or limited time offers. They commonly change out the merchandising around the board, and it kind of becomes this cluttered look, which is a bit overwhelming. If you think from a customer experience perspective, the brand is getting across all their merchandising information, but here we have 19 different pieces of merchandising and menu. And as a customer, it's difficult to make a decision on what you want to order. And even once you have, you may have that feeling of regret that you might have ordered the wrong thing because there is so many things to choose from. So we're going to talk through strategies of how we get from 19 pieces of merchandising, maybe down to a few less, and then talk about strategies to concentrate on things like order taking times or suggestive selling. So I think this is really a good basis and starting point. So a good quote here is that 74% of QSR customers put an easy to read menu at the top of their priority list. So we're going to start off focusing on easy to read. But before we get to that, this is an example of a typical digital drive-through setup. And the components in a typical digital drive-through setup are a drive-through menu board and the use of a pre-sell, which is approximately 1 to 2 car lengths behind the car currently placing an order. So what this kind of design and strategy does is create that modern, clean, and organized look to the drive-through. So easy to read. The topics here will be less clutter, brighter and clearer, day parting, and pre-sell. So when I started off, I touched off on the 19 points of merchandising in the drive-through lane. And here's just an example of a side-by-side where on the left, you have a static menu board, and you'll see there's a topper on it with things like the drinks. And then off to the side, there's additional point of purchase. And then over on a light post, there's an additional piece of marketing or promotional messaging. So this is just, kind of showing proof and evidence that, when you're static, there is all that add-on and extra merchandising, which can be a bit overwhelming. And what you have on the right is the digital menu board, as I mentioned, with that pre-sell and that double menu board at the drive-through order points. And when you look at that digital drive-through, what you'll notice is it's brighter and clearer. So the screens themselves are high brightness displays. They're 2500 nits. So they're easier to read in daylight. They also have sensors where at nighttime, they will dim their brightness in order to not put too much strain on the eyes. There's no color fading, so there's no fading of the actual translights or the actual messaging and menu that is put into the menu board. It's all digital. It is always high brightness. It's always clear. So the lack of that color fading really enhances the food perception. So if you want your food to be portrayed in its best light, really the use of those digital displays is the kind of ultimate way from a merchandising and marketing perspective to have that bright, crystal clear, almost true to life image. And when you pair that with things like using kind of horizons and adding a sense of depth to the menu, the food almost pops out. And all of that combined really leads to that enhanced brand perception. So there's no clutter. You have that food popping out of the menu board. It's craveable and it's easy to read. That all has add-on benefits to your customer experience. Focusing back in on the overwhelming amount of messaging, how do you solve for that? So strategies such as day parting, which put simply is commonly things like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and implementing strategies around segmenting your products throughout the day can help you do more with less per se. So you only put the breakfast products during breakfast, but then you may have strategies where during snack time, you change the products, or during late night, you have a consolidated menu. Or even if it's a family store, maybe you show kids meals in a bit more prominent light. So taking a look at your sales data, optimizing the product shown based on purchasing behaviors, and incorporating that into your menu design, that's something that's really only become possible recently with digital menu boards. So if we have family-friendly stores versus stores at universities, and then changing the menu to prioritize or consolidate products based on those setups, that becomes a much easier strategy with the use of the digital menu board. At nighttime, things like changing the background to being black in color can reduce eye strain in addition to the dimmed brightness. So if you think about your computer or your cell phone, things like a night mode that make it easier to read on your eyes, you want to implement strategies like that also to customers who are looking at these high brightness displays. And then really wrapping that up, it's with less choices to make, there's faster orders. So by reducing the clutter, kind of focusing the merchandising messaging and targeting the consumer, you're able to have the customer the capability to make faster decisions at the order point, which really reduces the stress and anxiety for a customer as well. The next component is pre-sell. So the pre-sell menu board is complementary to the drive-through menu board further up. So what happens at a pre-sell is there's really two components to it. There's peak and off-peak strategies. So if you think naturally during peak times, as cars pile up in the drive-through, customers will be in front of the pre-sell for a significant amount of time. And when customers are in front of the pre-sell for a significant amount of time, you may think things like this Baconator Bacon Deluxe limited time offer only has an impact on a consumer's decision making for several seconds. So commonly what we see during peak is actually strategies around getting cars through the drive-through faster. So in order to do this, instead of showing a promotion, you may show a consolidated menu or your full menu in rotation. And kind of the thinking behind this is, if we show customers the menu prior to them ordering, they will have their minds made up of, oh, I want to get this product today and a fries and a drink. And the other passengers also have the opportunity to make up their mind. So by the time they get to the order point, it is a kind of quick ordering process. And then during off-peak, so thinking about off-peak messaging, Off-peak is when the drive-thru is not as busy. So commonly, brands will want to focus on things like average check when they're not as busy. So putting the promotion of this Baconator Deluxe on the screen during that time of day may be more appropriate. Additionally, there's the ability to use motion video or ambient animation. So things like steam, cheese melting, kind of fog for something like a milkshake, and implementing those into the menu design really create those mouth-watering promotions and that impression of, hey, I haven't tried this, but it's limited time and it looks really great today. So using the pre-sell to drive check during those off-peak times, but then using the pre-sell to drive order taking times or reduce order taking times during peak, really kind of make that a system out of the digital drive-thru menu boards instead of them only having one intended purpose. And the last component, to go back to the cluttered look, is commonly pre-sale merchandising are signs that are stuck in the ground. They're taped onto places. They, just aren't always the most organized or professional looking in terms of the presentation. And by focusing that to a focal point in a digital pre-sale board, it helps kind of give that merchandising its kind of proper look and feel. So why now? Why is this all happening now? I'm going to touch on that. It really has to do with some changes in core technologies. So things like the display panels that are used outdoors being IP56 rated, being of a reasonable thinness and weight and price points are all critical. So only recently have the LCD display panels for use outdoors with the right brightness, with the right kind of thermal management, and then also the right durability. So the glass on these displays is made out of IK10 glass. Think of it like the Gorilla Glass on your iPhone, but gigantic. So they're able to take things like a blunt force impact or rocks being blown from a wind or a storm. So very, very highly durable, scratch resistant. They can take quite a bit of blunt force impacts. And then the kind of knock-on impacts of that to enclosure design. So if you go back a few years, in order to design an outdoor enclosure, you need to put what's called active heating and active cooling into the enclosure design. So think of it like you needed to put an air conditioner on the unit and a heater. So that drove costs, it drove complexity, it drove maintenance and support. And then the last component, which we'll be touching on in kind of the future pieces, is around edge computing. So the use of things like media players in the drive-thru and in restaurant, and the ability to start integrating those with API-centric or local messaging-specific kind of restaurant systems. So the ability to show a customer order display on the drive-thru menu board, the ability to talk to loyalty programs or mobile applications, or even use things like computer vision. So that's all coming to life. And those future-proofing components are really is what is getting brands to invest in the space. So where are brands? Who's investing? Who's already invested, and where do we see the space going? So right now, we're in the early majority. So roughly, 20% of brands have made a transition, and we really see the interest continuing to rise as we look at the technology adoption curve. So what I think will naturally happen is throughout 2020, we'll continue to rise through the early majority. And then in 2021 and 2022, I believe we're going to hit that peak. So the technology is here, it's arrived, and I really see brands starting to jump on board of saying, hey, look at these new capabilities, look at how I can change my merchandising, look how I can use data to drive my menu strategy, looking at things like suggestive selling, maybe it's order taking times, it really depends what you're after, and seeing those as business enablers or a platform. And that kind of transitions us into transformation. So covering off on transformation, I think this is a good quote, is that we consistently saw that it resulted in sales lifts of roughly 4 to 6%. And this was a study by McKinsey on the impacts of kind of digitization and transformation to a brand in terms of deploying kiosks and digital menu boards. They saw lifts of 4 to 6%. And on transformation, it's really a platform for business enablement. So things like customer order display, suggestive sell, system integration, and then optimization. Customer order display, this is something that many of you are probably familiar with. In the kind of static world, commonly a customer order display would be placed in the speaker post or near the speaker post, and it would be an LCD reader board that would read out a customer's order. With the move to the digital drive-through, there's the capability to embed that into the menu board and display. And really the impact of this is you're able to focus the customer's eyes and attention more on the menu board, and then you're able to implement a suggestive selling strategy, which we'll get to in a moment. But the customer is able to see what products they're ordering. So the home style and the chicken strips in this example, a Diet Coke, things like sauce selections or side selections are also shown here. So you can see increased order accuracy through customers being able to correct their order. And then what we have here is an example of a confirmation screen. So this is once an order is complete, the crew can ask the customer to confirm their order. There's also a merchandising opportunity here. We've greeted the customer at the pre-sell. We've kind of eased them through the ordering process with the customer order display. And then there's this idea of post-sell messaging. So after the customer's made their decisions, you can say, next time, try a wrap. Or it may be something to activate them on different channels, like download our mobile app or try Uber Eats. And implementing those strategies is something that you can do by reusing the board as its intention and nature changes throughout a customer's order. Suggestive sell. So next to the customer order display, commonly it'll be paired with a suggestive sell. And suggestive selling strategies are really a test and learn component. So it's as someone's ordering, you know something about them. And that something about them is they just ordered a home style burger in this example. And maybe we want to test when customers order burgers, we recommend chicken strips or we recommend French fries. So really what you do is you implement a test of pairing certain products with different suggestions and then running those campaigns, measuring the results, and optimizing that over time. So similar to looking at your merchandising strategy for the entire menu, what you can do with suggestive sell is related to each individual product, implement a strategy. So I'll just go through the examples here of the home style with the chicken strips. The chicken strips, when you order those, it recommends a soft drink. When you order the soft drink, it recommends a limited time offer or premium products such as the Carolina. And the focus in this space is not always on average check. So suggestive selling, you always think sell more. You may do something that we commonly call an order accelerator. And what an order accelerator is when a customer, let's say, orders a chicken strips, we show them the sauces that are available. Or if they order a value meal, maybe we show them what sides are available. So if there's French fries and onion rings and side salads and things of those nature, it's showing them those options and making them more apparent in that space. So suggestive selling, it's a test and learn component, but there is also the ability to make it easier to order through things like that order accelerator. System integration. So in terms of system integration, the most straightforward one that I think a lot of people take for granted is pricing integration. So pricing integration, in the example here on the right, I have the menu board up and I have the pricing and the calories highlighted. And through integration with pricing, brands are able to push out pricing updates really as quickly as you can make an API call. So pretty much real-time updates of menu pricing. And why I say that's taken for granted is in the static world, it may take 45 or 60 days to roll out pricing update across an entire brand. And if you think about the lead time on that, if we're going to raise product prices by 10 cents per item, and we're losing out on 30 to 40 cents per order, and that's happening across hundreds of orders a day for 45 days, it really helps stack the business case in the favor of a digital menu board of not needing that lead time, not needing as much coordination, and being able to push out pricing updates. And not only just test out pricing updates, if you're a brand that's working in pricing tiers today, you can increase the complexity of your pricing tiers. So instead of needing, only operating out of, let's say, 10 tiers, you can take a look at the data, the performance, and possibly, increase the complexity of those pricing tiering strategies. Components such as product outage, so that's the next example. Product outage is the idea if there is a product that's either limited time or a product that we're currently out of stock on. It's the idea of being able to put that product in outage and put messaging such as coming back soon, removing that product. Maybe there's an issue with lettuce supply and we want to put a notification that, currently there's issues with the lettuce supply. We anticipate that salads will be back on February 10th. Being able to manage that messaging to customers instead of meeting them with disappointment of they pull up to the menu board, they order a salad and they're told after the fact that salad's no longer available. It's kind of, meeting them up front with that messaging, being friendly about it, and reducing disappointment is kind of the key component there, and letting them kind of focus on other items. So we don't want people disappointed. We don't want them having regrets. So it's being able to be an enabler of that. The last piece is around system integration, is really around back office systems or the point of sale. So this is pricing data, nutrition data, things like automation of store hours and day parts. And then it's really things like omni-channel as well. So integration with loyalty programs, mobile ordering, or other forms of customer identification are things we see coming. There's brands already moving in that space in terms of greeting customers, showing them their loyalty points and rewards balances. So digital menu boards also give you that ability to create that interactive customer experience. So Brian's here, and what do I do when Brian's here? Do I say you have these loyalty components available, you have a free cookie available, here's your balance? Do you gamify the menu board? That's all coming to life with kind of real-time integrations, the use of a display to bring that to life. And we'll cover off more on that in the future components. I've touched on a bit of this throughout the presentation, but the last component of transformation is that optimization. So that's A/B testing menus. Is that something like having a beef menu versus a chicken menu? Is it things like taking a look at your promotions and how you use them at different restaurants or different day parts and optimizing this? So this is all about testing to learn. Do things like motion or animation work for your brand? So really what digital menu boards enable is the use of testing strategies for A/B testing, different creatives, and the measurement of those over time. Additionally, deploying different menus to different groups of stores is much, much, much easier. So segmenting those test populations from each other is as simple as a few clicks when done right. And then the last component of that is the balancing or prioritizing the check versus the order time. So you may sometimes a day you may want to prioritize average check, or during other times a day you may want to reduce order times. And it's that flexibility to kind of turn on a dime and focus on what you need to do as a brand at that store during that time. And with that, I'll get into personalization. So I'll quickly touch on personalization. Really, personalization is a journey. So as you make a transition from static to digital, there's those kind of common components like day parting and national menus. And then over time, you'll explore strategies in relevant and segmented. As I mentioned earlier, some people at the bleeding edge are looking at personalized and kind of granular strategies. But what I would say for anyone looking to consider digital menu boards, this is not something where you're going to activate all technologies overnight. And all technologies may not be right for every brand. So there's going to be specific customer experiences, specific use cases that you explore. And really, digital is an enabler to test those, explore those, and get that journey right that fits your customers. So this is kind of the spectrum per se, but by no means is it something that you kind of accomplish or achieve overnight. And this localization of messaging, so I've been speaking to this concept throughout the presentation, but really this last slide here covers off on things like a national menu strategy, a regional menu strategy. So down in Nashville or Tennessee, we have a Nashville hot chicken sandwich that's only shown at those stores in Tennessee. It's a family store. It has the mobile application. And then designing the content to know, I need to prioritize family products. I have a special promotion that's only available here in the Nashville hot chicken, but I also need to show the national promotion that's currently active, like the Valentine's cookie. And with that, I will hand it back over to Ravi for Intel to talk on the future of the drive-thru.
Thank you, Brian. That was a brilliant overview of all aspects of the drive-through restaurant. As most of you can see from here, right, it is very obvious that you're already on a great path to digitally transform, modernize, and personalize the drive-through experience here. But I think at the same time, it's very important to think through the future-proofing aspects, right? And so that way you can plan adequately and look at all of the return on investment objectives that you have in place. So from that standpoint, I plan to touch on a couple of these technology ingredients that can help us with this future-proofing aspects. First and foremost, computer vision, right? Per recent studies that Forbes and others have done, they point out that only 3% or so brands are using computer vision technology today, but they do see that greater than 40% will plan to start or finish the deployments within the next 2 years. That's a huge jump from where it is currently, right? I believe this applies to the restaurant space very well. Restaurants will find new ways to bring new levels of efficiency, customer engagement to every touch point in that customer journey, right? Specifically in the drive-through, if we were to think about some use cases, license plate detection, audience detection, voice ordering, these are all like practical use cases that we can foresee. From an Intel standpoint, we are continuing to innovate in this space. We are offering many different analytics accelerator products that enables our solution provider ecosystem with toolkits such as OpenVINO and things like that to achieve these kind of use cases. And speaking of voice, conversational AI that takes and processes orders very efficiently, doesn't matter how many items per transaction, is definitely another practical application, not just in the drive-through, but in the entire customer experience at the restaurant, right? All the way at the front of the restaurant, through the drive-throughs and so forth. There are several toolkits and ingredients from Intel and our partner ecosystem that can be leveraged now to visualize and enable some of these use cases. And from an artificial intelligence and machine learning perspective, what we see is as this decade progresses, right, we'll see more and more examples of how data can expand a restaurant's ability to innovate in real time at the drive-through and across all the supply chain level, right? As restaurants evolve in tandem with the ever-changing buying habits of the digital natives that we touched on earlier. We'll see more ways in which artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, data fusion, and computer vision, they can all combined can optimize the restaurant's layout, discover customer insights, expand the engagement aspect of it, increase the purchases, increase the basket size in a way, and even predict demand, like some of the use cases that Brian touched on earlier about suggestive selling and so forth. Imagine a scenario where a customer's order is almost ready even before they pull into the drive-through. So that's kind of really the power that AI, machine learning, deep learning, and so forth will bring to the table. And when we talk about all of these computer vision, AI, voice, and all of these, these are all different aspects of workloads that we can envision. And we touched earlier as well on the cloudification, which basically ranges from some of this on-premise to off-premise computing that can be either on a private cloud or a public cloud or a hybrid setup. With the ever-increasing workloads that we talked about, that within the restaurant premise and be able to provide the restaurants with an ability to store, process, and action on that local data, some level of additional high-performance computing is needed, and that's what this edge computing notion brings to it. So this kind of lays the foundation stone for a modern architecture where everything that was traditionally done on the cloud now can be handled at the edge at the restaurant premise or within the restaurant premise. These are the capabilities that exist today. Some of these exist today, and that'll help you to start this transition and get on that journey. And next is kind of the 5G aspects of it. Many of you heard about this. What we believe is, starting in the very, very near future, the rollout of 5G will be well underway, and with speeds up to 1,000 times faster than what 4G can now provide, restaurants and their customers will have the ability to interact with all of these devices, client devices, very seamlessly and proactively, right? 5G, we believe, will be a major driver, sealing the deal for the technologies that enable things like digital signage to become an active component of the customer's journey while they're in the restaurant, right, or in the premises of the restaurant. Primarily addressing, kind of the reliability, latency, and the speed challenges. So again, that's a quick touch on some of the future-proofing technologies. At this point, I'll wrap up the webinar by pointing out that there are tremendous opportunities to digitally transform the restaurant space and deliver rich and engaging experiences to these new age customers through modernization, transformation, and personalization. Also, to utilize all the actionable data and optimize operations and experiences for better business decisions. If you are a solution provider, hopefully you have seen that there are tremendous opportunities within, and it does not all have to come together in one instance. You can start layering these various technology elements with the future-proofing mindset. So to sum it all, we touched on all of these aspects. We definitely want to hear from you. The team at Coates and Intel are always willing to engage and help you navigate through this solution space. Thank you again for your time with us today, and maybe we can take a couple of questions here. Greg, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Ravi and Brian. That was some really outstanding information. Yeah, we have time for several audience questions. First up, what's the technology difference from digital signage 5 to 10 years ago to today? In other words, what are we getting now that we weren't then?
Sure. This is Brian from Coates. In terms of the differences from 5 to 10 years ago to today, I think I covered off on a component of it when I was talking through kind of that modular hardware and kind of some of those changes. But 5 to 10 years ago, there's the need for the active heaters and coolers. As a result, the costs and complexity associated with digital drive-through solutions was rather high. And kind of through the evolution of those technologies over the past few years, what you're really seeing is there is now a commercially viable, kind of affordable solution to implement at scale. And it kind of has the backing of large providers that are needed to support it at scale as well. So it's kind of that over the past few years, there's just been that transformation in terms of those technology components. Something that I forgot to cover off on when I was talking was really a future-proofing component for brands who are looking to possibly implement digital in the future. Even as you're installing new builds or remodels, I would highly consider looking at what it takes to future-proof for digital. And what I mean by that is things like running the proper power, the proper networking and Ethernet and conduit out to the lanes, and then also looking at the footings that you're putting in. It'd probably be wise to invest into digital ready, even if you're currently installing static, because as that adoption curve moves over the next few years, the costs, one of the highest costs around these solutions is honestly the installation component and running things like conduit or power if they're not existing. So future-proofing is a wise decision as well.
Okay, our next question. Have you looked at how payments will evolve at the drive-through?
So payments it's an interesting space in the drive-through. Through our experience, it can vary by market. So if you think about things like chip and pen versus just contactless where that's not required, you'll find local market requirements. So if you're in Australia or the United States or Europe, those can vary. But we're definitely seeing an interest in reducing friction wherever possible. So Is it just tap and go at the payment window, or is it actually tap and go at the drive-through order point? Or do you pay through the mobile app and you never pull a card out at all? We're definitely seeing how people pay changing in the space, and there's kind of that a bit of a push to reduce the need for and automate that where possible, where labor is not needed, or reducing the need on labor in order to implement payment. So it'll depend on the market. I think it'll be a little more challenging in the United States, but places where you can just kind of tap and go, potentially a little bit easier.
Okay, next question. Do you think the benefits of having digital order points in the drive-through that allow for more complex offerings would offset the friction of increased drive-through times?
That's an interesting one in terms of a customer experience and journey. A lot of the content strategies I've been talking about, like day parting, like suggestive selling, it's a lot about testing and learning and understanding really what works best. So in terms of digital introducing more complexity, there may be more work in terms of thought and design behind the menu and how it changes throughout the ordering process. And there is a balance of not doing too much. I can definitely say that through our experiences, there's a balance between going too far. But I think really with regards to this question around complexity, balancing it, and order taking times, it's probably a conversation that's best offline in terms of what content strategies are you exploring, when you refer to complexity, kind of what you mean by that, and really exploring it through a conversation or a strategy, rather than, because just content is a complicated component. So would love to engage more on that offline.
Next question. What would be your advice to brands looking to trial only a single screen like a pre-sell?
I'll take that one as well. This is Brian from Coates. In terms of brands looking to trial just a pre-sell, really we see the combination of the pre-sell and the menu board as a pair. They function best together. But if you're looking to explore the installation process, how digital looks in your drive-through, if you're looking to prove out the hardware in terms of it being rugged, reliable, weatherproofed, if you're also looking to integrate that with your store networking and power and just making sure that all those pieces work, there's definitely benefits to that digitization of the pre-sell and standardizing that messaging and making it look better, and using it as a testing platform for the overall drive-through. But I think our position recommendation would be that we've seen the best results when you take those kind of strategies around peak and off-peak, the menu design, the day parting, and linking that all together forms kind of a more cohesive strategy around merchandising in the drive-through for your customers.
Okay, we have time for a few more questions. Next up is, will mobile and delivery do away with the need for the digital drive-through?
That's definitely a good question in terms of there's these new channels coming around, a new generation of consumers. Things like mobile and delivery and Uber Eats are definitely transforming how customers get their food, how they engage with brands. But really, I see the drive-through as that original on-demand convenience. Quite a few brands with drive-throughs see over 50% of their sales done through the drive-through. I think that unplanned convenience of stopping by the drive-through, whenever it comes top of mind, I'm on the way home, running errands, and what's closest, what's most near, and what's convenient. I don't see that going away. There may be a bit of an impact from things like delivery, but I really don't see that core part of a quick service restaurant's business being that drive-through going away anytime in the next decade or so. And I also see things like mobile being complementary to the menu board itself and creating some of those interactive experiences or kind of skip the line check-in processes and facilitating those with the use of digital I believe we'll start seeing in the next few years as well.
Okay, next question. What are your thoughts on customer identification?
In terms of thoughts on customer identification, I'm not sure if Ravi has some thoughts on those. From a Coates perspective, we've seen the use of scanners in the drive-through to check in customers for things like loyalty programs. Mobile, I think, will be coming. The testing of technologies around things like beacons and using those in drive-through lanes, I think has been a piece where the accuracy has been evolving of that solution over time. As I mentioned earlier, with payments and kind of new methods in that space or testing new technologies, I think that customer identification piece is a wave that's coming, but the first step is going from static to digital. And then once you have digital, exploring things like identification, how that works in the drive-through, and how you explore it for your customers, I think is that kind of second step of the journey. And I think we're just starting to see what's going to be happening in that space.
Yeah, if I may add in here to what Brian said, right? I mean, definitely customer identification is a very important element in delivering that rich experience and meeting the new age customers' expectations. But as long as the restaurants can do it in a way where the customers opt in for some of this information to be, exchanged in a meaningful way. And from an Intel standpoint, us ensuring that any technology that is being incorporated into these devices that are doing the customer identification, they're using that anonymity as a very important element. And as long as you manage that, manage the data in such a way that it is secure, doesn't leave the premise, all of that stuff, I think, is really what ensures and drives that privacy compliance, which should put the customers and consumers at ease at large. So I think, it's an important element of the business, but at the same time, ensuring the technology kind of conforms to do that in a meaningful way, I think we are in good shape.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and I think this is a good point to end on. I'd like to hear from you both. Brian, we'll toss it to you first and then hear from Ravi. So for those who are interested, what would be a next step in setting up a discussion with each of your groups?
For sure. Probably the best way to get in touch with me would be through the Coates website at coatesgroup.com. And that's Coates, COATES group.com, or shooting me an email at Brian, BRIAN .Selman, SELMAN, at coatesgroup.com. And as I mentioned earlier in the talk, happy to have anyone into our showroom here in Chicago to walk you through some of our solutions, and I look forward to any further conversations.
Yeah, and from the Intel side, certainly if you have access to an Intel sales representative that you're already working with, please bring this topic up, and they will be able to bring the right subject matter expertise. And if you're unsure where to go to, you can certainly reach out to me, ravi.siriganidi, which is my last name here, at intel.com. And that should definitely be a good starting point, and we'll be happy to have a conversation around your needs and then be able to address them and point you to solution providers like Coates who can deliver those solutions for you.
All right. Thank you, Brian and Ravi. That is all the time we have for our program. Thanks to Intel for making this event possible, to our presenters for sharing their knowledge and expertise. Have a great day.